he says there are 4 freedoms of grace, which I really liked. He says grace can't be some abstract concept that you talk about in your home. It has to be a real-time action that ultimately imprints itself on your children's hearts. To talk about grace, sing about grace, and have our children memorize verses about grace, but not give them specific gifts of grace, is to undermine God's work of grace in their hearts. So then he talks about the freedom to be different. Religious legalism tries to press everyone into the same mold. Grace accepts people where they are and conforms them to the image of Christ despite their unique tastes and differences. The freedom to be vulnerable. One of the great things about grace is the safe haven it offers to a transparent heart. I totally agree.
Yeah.
God's grace accepts people when it catches them without their makeup. We need to treat the members of our family the way God treats us. And he talks about the freedom to be candid. Candor isn't about catching people off guard to make them look worse than they are. Candor is several steps above honesty and is a way of communicating freely without prejudice or malice. Candor takes the truth and frames it in a way that helps rather than harms.
Right.
The most important nuance of candor is that it is supposed to be free of deception. In grace-based homes, families can respectfully dialogue without fear of payback.
Right.
And then finally, the freedom to make mistakes. Grace provides equilibrium for a family. Where too many parents are concerned with how others view their family, grace-based parents are more excited with how God views their family. Grace-based parenting is not a checklist for parenting, it's a lifestyle. Grace demands that we actually walk by faith. Grace-based families don't bother erecting fences around their families because they know full well that sin is already present and accounted for inside their family.
Yeah.
The grace-based home assumes its members will struggle with sin and helps them learn how to walk in the Spirit and not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. Grace-based families understand that the only real solution for sin is the work of Christ on their behalf. There is nothing any of us can do on our own to gain more of God's love.
Yeah.
What's your reaction to all of that?
Well, through the years, as I've, number one, had my own family and watched others, one of the things that always troubled me is it seems like a lot of parents, they're very, very concerned about how their children are going to turn out, what kind of job are they going to have, what kind of education are they going to be able to pursue, who are they going to marry. But it's all centered around I'll say the dynamics of society. And, they want to equip them and think that, once I've got them raised, I've equipped them to deal with life. And yet they neglect the spiritual foundation that all of that should stand on.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, you can have the best education, you can have the best job, you can
have a lot of money,
marry well or whatever, and yet have a life that ends up in disaster because there's no spiritual foundation.
Right.
And so in that case, would you say that the parents were successful or not successful?
Right, exactly.
Right. It depends on the criteria that you're making the judgment. And so, the people say, well, this grace stuff, again, we've talked about this a lot of times, it doesn't really work. It's not practical. And of course, we would ask the question, how do you know?
If you haven't applied it yet. Yeah.